What's going on, guys? Belair here. Every major brings pressure to players, teams, coaches, fan bases, even regions. And no pressure is higher than the World Championship as we head towards Lyon, which, as of recording this, God, we're only like a week away. 8 days, I think. And I wanted to bring you 7 entities that I think have the most pressure on them headed into the World Championship. I polled everybody on Twitter about this, and so far, there's actually a name or two that are not even on my list that are the most common, and I'll talk about those once we get there. But I wanted to start out with who we are rocking with on the cam. This is actually Yan, point of view, game one from Raleigh against Twisted Minds, a series from the Swiss stage that they ended up losing in 5 games, and that is kind of where we start here with Yan, the front man of Furia. Over Raleigh and EWC, they only have 2 series wins, and those are against Wildcard and Virtus Pro from Raleigh, if memory serves me correctly. They're in a major slump right now, and Yan is their best player. Where's the flash? They definitely have been a team that have buttered their bread, if you'll allow me to say so, on the offensive end with speed, especially like within their own region. I mean, they just beat teams up in a pretty rough way. And historically, they've been around that top 4 benchmark, but so far they have not been able to capture that this late into the season. What, Birmingham, they went top 6, I think. And since then, I don't know. They just haven't been able to figure it out. They're kind of in between styles, I would say, right now. And Yan doesn't look very comfortable. I talked about this in a previous video. I feel like them looking great starts with him playing awesome. But what was it? 0.12 goals per game. Not going to get the job done when we're talking about EWC. They'll definitely hope to look better. Most of the pressure from the community is off. I don't think most people have them as like a top 4 team. So whether or not Yan can get afloat, I think determines not only Furia's destiny in a large way, but also what South America might look like moving forward. If Furia are to totally bomb out here, maybe there's some changes, and it starts with the head of the snake, I think, with Yan, as opposed as when we're talking about what changes the off season might bring. Next, I wanted to talk about Beast Mode, primary offensive weapon for a team that needs offense. NRG, I'm going to talk about them when I come out with my predictions video here within the next couple of days, but they're a favorite for sure. They're in the conversation. How can they not be? I feel like they're a top 4, top 5 team right now. If you want to tell me they're top 3, I'll listen. I won't agree, but I'll listen. And we know that they're a team that are rock solid defensively most of the time, as Yan's going to bleed another one here against Twisted Minds. But for them to really get at the peak of their powers, I feel like that offensive flow, that freedom, that versatility that Beast Mode can bring is the straw that stirs the drink here for North America's #1 seed. And if he can't get it going offensively, I think they're going to struggle. They're a team that definitely get a lot of shots up, but don't shoot with a ton of. They don't bring a high shooting percentage to the board all the time, which can kind of hurt them, especially a team that aren't necessarily a super high scoring squad when we think about some of the other elite teams in the world. Carmine, Falcons, Vitality. Teams that can really score in bunches, not something that NRG does all the time with full effect. What about OCE as a region? Their only 2 wins as a region this season in RLCS sanctioned lands. Both of them were against Foot Esport. Not great track record. I don't know if OCE has been in a worse spot internationally since their history that I can recall. Maybe there's some really early season, but way back in the day, CJ's team was making a top 6. So I don't know. I think this is the doldrums for OCE, and they're going to hope for a big event here. But between TSM probably being my team that I'm going to rate the lowest overall at this event, and Wildcard being just like their namesake, I don't have super high expectations, but there's got to be some pressure internally, especially from your top guys, Banana Head, Super Locky, to kind of get something going. And a turnover there by Nobu is going to be a fifth goal for Furia here. 44 seconds left. Let's try and sneak one more in here. What about Joyo? A great EWC for GK is going to add high expectations, excuse me. And he's the best player. He's been on a crazy grind, by the way. He's got like 1,300 ranked twos games this season. This Rocket League, like quote unquote season, not necessarily RLCS season. You guys know what I mean. And he's really been grinding. He talked about the grind he's been putting up in some of the interviews for EWC. And I felt like he was their third most impactful player from that EWC run, which I think is a good thing for GK and their fans, thinking, hey, you know, Joyo wasn't even the best version of himself when we made it all the way to a grand finals. Maybe we can kind of improve things and look even better here. And I think whether or not they're able to do it, we got massive performances from Archie and Oli, of course. Ixo slotting in as a great head coach there in his first event with the team. But I do think that Joyo is kind of the X factor as to whether or not that team is able to repeat what they were able to do in that Riyadh event. So let's move on to our next game and finish out with our final three high pressure situations. I got to tell you, I was blown away that this player was not higher up the list when I had asked in my tweet which players have the most pressure. Only like one or two people named Monkey Moon, who might, in my opinion, be the player with the most pressure on him. I mean, obviously he already has the resume, so if he doesn't win it, it's not like we're going to be like, oh, Monkey Moon's not good at Rocket League. Like, he has already cemented his place within the broader context of our esport and its history. But still, like, this is the Monkey Moon event. This is like no other event. Every result that is underperformed for Vitality this season, which has been most, if not all of them have been like, well, you know, it still doesn't matter because once we get to Worlds, Monkey Moon and Worlds, you know what I mean? And he's got to live up to that name. I mean, even they've done this all season long where they're so good and then they're not. And in the most recent tournament, it was both Exotic and Monkey Moon, and honestly, even Zin, who underperformed once they got into the playoffs of EWC. Great series. We're watching them here against GK in the quarters, and then in the third place matchup against Falcons. All three of them were excellent. Excuse me, both of them were excellent. But, well, I guess all three if you want to say their NRG series as well. Getting off topic, lock in, Bel-Air. This is just like, Monkey Moon has to be good at this tournament, in my opinion, for us to still, like, what am I trying to say? Not for us to think that he's still good, because obviously he is still excellent, but just like Monkey Moon has been synonymous with world championships, and he has gotten so much slack during the regular season just because the sentiment from everybody is just kind of like, wait until Worlds. And I've kind of shared that. I think I've been higher on the season for Vitality than most have. Like, despite some of their results, I still have been like, God, I just look at this team on paper and I can't imagine a world where they're not one of the best teams in the world. But they have continued, they have continued to have a massive asterisk on them all season long, where they just get into these playoffs and they crumble. And, you know, I don't know if it's a combination of the talent they are playing. Seems like we get teams like GK who are just like peaking once they get to Vitality. There's definitely been some of that where it's like, man, this team looks so good against Vitality. But some of that is also on the players themselves, you know? Is it a coincidence if teams always peak on you, or is that more of a you thing? And in this series in particular, I was confused by Monkey Moon as he is going to almost sneak that one in there off a great back wall pass. I was confused by his play because he looked stiff, he looked nervous, he looked out of sorts, which is not what I would expect from a player with his resume. But yet, that's what we got from the goat, and hashtag my goat, and I think that I think that he's a name that just has to be highlighted and bolded in Sharpie for me as players who have a ton of pressure on them this event, because you know, world championships and Monkey Moon have just been correlated with one another for several seasons now, and he's got to prove it here again for a team that have had a pretty rocky season based on what they had hoped to accomplish from the outset. All right, let's talk about Blast, our production team. They've been touting this as a huge event, and it is a huge event. It could potentially be the biggest, most impactful World Championship / LAN / Rocket League event that we have in our young history. And, you know, first season for the Blast production team. Can they live up to the hype? This is obviously an organization that have produced a ton of massive esport events, not just within Rocket League context, but all across the board with some A and S tier games. And there's been a big buildup. There's been a lot of hype around it, not only, of course, because it's the World Championship, but also because of the French factor, and not only the hype and the buzz coming into the event, but also the event itself. They put out the schedule, and we're going to have long days. It's like 8 or 9 hour days that we're going to be putting out, which has just got to add strain to the production to not only keep up the quality, but also all of the facilitation on and off the pitch that have to go into making an event like this really hum when there's going to be a lot of eyes watching. So a lot of pressure on Blast. And then finally, one of the names that I saw probably most frequently when I asked online was Vatira. I didn't even have him on my list, to be honest with you, but I get it. Although I will say I had Carmine Core just as an entity, because I feel like there's pressure on all three and their coach. You know, Drali is currently in contention in a lot of people's eyes for best player in the world against Zen. And this is just chaos on the field right here, as Monkey Moon is somehow moving this down the field in the waning moments of this game. Not only pressure on Drali to keep, you know, the title of best currently in the world, but also a player like Vatira, who I think it was Melikim who had said this is the best opportunity he's had to win a world championship since Moist. I might agree with that. A lot of pressure there for a player who has had a lot of great teams, a lot of great results, but is still looking to secure that world championship as the game is going to end here. Zen and Monkey Moon putting up huge points here on Aquadome. Of course, they're also the favorites. They're looking to book in their season with LAN wins. They, of course, secure Birmingham and EWC. And Farah looking to balance all of these personalities. And, of course, Atau, probably the player who is, you know, third in people's minds when you talk about Vatira and Drali. He was excellent at EWC. And at a more micro level, I think for them to reach their peak of powers, it has to be Atau humming on offense. So it's not as glaring of a name on paper, just like looking at it on its face, as a name like Vatira, who's kind of the captain of this team, or Farah even. But the fact that this is also in front of the home crowd here in France, of course, it is worth mentioning that Drali is Moroccan and Atau is Belgian, but still, this is a French org, French speakers. The French community has kind of adopted them within the context of our game. A lot of pressure there. So those are my 7 names. Guys, please let me know in the comments down below if you agree or if there's other names on your list. Thanks as always for giving me time out of your day. And until next time, guys, take it easy.